Good evening, all the beautiful people of Food from Zanzi. I'm so happy to be back on this session with you. Tonight, we're doing a part two of a conversation that we had a few weeks ago, and that was specifically around the olive industry. So I'm really excited to welcome back one of the speakers that was part of that conversation initially. She's, of course, the CEO of SA Olive, Wendy Peterson. And we're looking forward to also chat to a primary producer, so someone who's actually working with a specific commodity, and also welcoming an agricultural economist to give us some broader insight, in terms of the olive market and what's actually happening globally and locally in South Africa. So, of course, this is hashtag Gather to Grow. I see my speakers are already in the session, so I'm just going to ask them to pretty please request to join me and have this wonderful conversation around all things olives. Good evening, Nicholas. How are you?
I'm good, and yourself?
I'm good, thank you, guys. Hats off to Nicholas, who literally created his Instagram account. This evening, he was like, I didn't have Instagram. It's like, okay. I was like, pretty please, can you create an account? So he did that. And obviously it's all for the love of agriculture and all for the love of the olive industry. So thank you so much for joining me. I was just doing a quick introduction. I think many people that join these conversations with us weekly understand the format. We basically focus on a specific area within agriculture. This week we're focusing on olives. Wendy was able to join us. Was it now almost 2 months ago, Wendy, when we had the first conversation?
Yes, 2 months ago. I remember it being in the heart of winter, so it was very cold. But yeah, I think it's 2 months ago.
2 months ago, Wendy was here with me, and we started like the part one of the kind of just giving people a bit of an overview of the industry. We had someone, Ubuntu olive oil, that Loiso, I think from that brand. Loiso from that brand. Louisa was part of the conversation. And so there we kind of just unpacked a bit of kind of what the industry is about, how do people kind of start looking at entering the industry. And this time around, we have a primary producer obviously joining us to talk about how he's been navigating the sector. So I'm going to maybe kick off. Maybe I'll start with Wendy as usual, because she's the CEO of Olive SA. And I always give women the chance to speak first. Nicholas, I'm very sorry. But Wendy, maybe you could just kick us, kind of off with the conversation, kind of as a representative of SA Olives. And if you can just tell us a little bit more about what the landscape and the olive industry is actually like within the country. Thanks.
So thank you, Dawn. And once again, thank you for just providing Olive the opportunity and the platform to share information about our industry. So the olive industry in South Africa, it's fairly in its infancy stage, the starting developing stage. We've got a few very large producers, about 7 of them, but the industry is made up of about 230 producers, nurseries, growers in the industry, and they are all members of ours. And we are literally funded by a statutory levy that's being imposed on the industry, so a voluntary contribution in terms of levy income, and that levies we use obviously to advance the industry and to look at support services of how we could grow the industry and develop the industry further. Then of the 230 producers, we talk about 3,700 hectares of olive trees. And in South Africa, we produce between 2 million, just over 2 million, 2.8 million liters of olive oil for the industry. And we import about 5 to 6 million liters into South Africa yearly. So unlike other commodities, our statutory levy is based both on locally, domestically produced product, table olives and olive oil, and then also on imported products. In other commodities, it's only locally produced product, but for olive, it's a little bit different. And then, we've got, Nicholas can go into the cultivars. There's a few different cultivars also in table olives and for olive oil. But that is the sole makeup of the industry in a nutshell.
Thank you so much for the overview. I think when we had the conversation 2 months ago, we'd kind of spoken briefly about, how do new farmers really get into it? Is it something that new and developing, farmers that's stepping into the industry can actually consider? Is there still a huge gap that we kind of need to fill? How does one kind of look at the landscape of how it's set up? And I'm hoping to get into that, as the conversation goes. But I'll maybe like to, invite Nicholas into the conversation, maybe just to firstly tell us about him, about his farming business and where it all started for you in terms of, starting in olives as a production. How did you actually get into the industry? Thanks.
Actually, you're coming with a very long hook there. I grew up in Ribbentrop, so it is the home for the Olive Festival. So there was always this connection with olives. Never knew it until the opportunity came into my life. I'm actually a tradesman by paper. I love accounting and did that at some stage, and switched over to farming olives when the opportunity came. I'm not looking back at all. I mean, farming is a joy and olive oil, but it can always also give you a little bit trick. You can see I'm turning a bit grey here as well.
I would show you. I can compete with your grey hair, but but yeah. So is it that you're fairly new? I actually know your brand, and I've seen it on the shelves, and of course, you're not too far away from me because I'm based in Wellington. But what has your experience been like, growing olives in South Africa, particularly with regards to the climate and the soil conditions? I mean, that's one of the biggest challenges for farmers generally, finding the right soil, ensuring that you're kind of working with nature. And all the changes that we're experiencing with our climate. Thanks.
So nature is nature. I mean, it can be brutal, but it can also be very forgiving at certain places. I can't speak for a lot of areas. My expertise coming from the Twister and then specifically the Nay Valley area. We've got very low rainfall, very high heat, strong wind that is always not forgiving. We're getting a lot of pests and a lot of fungi that we need to treat, especially some pests that were originally on the other side of the mountain. Now it's a little bit migrating to our side and giving me a little bit more of a headache than it used to. But I mean, our soils, it's beautiful. It's everybody knows South African soil for agriculture. It's perfect. If nature falls apart, it can be in 1 year grabs you into another thing.
Of course. I mean, for me, I know very little about the olive industry, but if you can take us through the production timeline, sourcing, how did you source your trees? When did you start planting? What time of year? How does it work? Just for those that might be interested. Thanks.
I started at Willow Creek. It was about 5.5, 6 years ago. The farm was already fully developed, 193 hectares. We've got now. We've got our own nursery, making our own younglings of different cultivars. We do it a little bit more in, I want to say, not industrial, but a little bit more bigger scale. We sell to someone that wants to put it at their home. We want to sell it to someone that build their own new farm as well. And we also take their hand with it. We also try and give advice where we can with soil analysis and the whole process going through there. But in the 5.5 years, we've also planted some new trees, taking out some old cultivars that is not suited for our area, specifically like a Licino tree. It needs a lot of cold units, the Richardson unit, so it makes it very difficult for our area. And traditionally, we replanted it with some Arbequinus or some Favolosa cultivar. It's two very, I want to say, robust cultivars. Year after year, you're going to get some olives, and it's got a different character. The Arbequinus, one side to the delicate, nice blending oil, and the Favolosa to the very pungent and I want to say stronger oil. But yeah, I'm not sure if I fully answered your question there.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, it's definitely, I think you've given us some insight. I don't think we can really get into all the aspects of the production. And I also just want to take a moment to welcome Nozipho Puana to the conversation. She's an agricultural economist, and she's the founder of Agriculture Market Research Insights and Analytics, or analyst. And she's the co-founder of Protein Master Agri Feed. I hope I got that right. Nozipho, welcome to the conversation.
Thank you.
Nozipho actually published something recently on the olive industry on her LinkedIn, and I was like, okay, I think I'm going to take a chance to have her join the conversation as an agricultural economist, just to kind of give us a broader perspective on the conversation. And I'm sure you were listening to both Wendy and Nicholas talking about it. But if you can just from your side, as an agricultural economist, give us some insight. Also, just share some of the points that you raised about how we compete globally in terms of the quality of our olives and olive oil. Thanks so much, Nozipho.
All right, thank you for the opportunity. Greetings to everyone. So climate change, yes, I've been asking both South Africa and communities. Mostly, I'll talk about extreme events that have been experiencing your heat wave and drought, which is affecting the production capacity of the olive oil. However, with the recent situation where there's a popularity in terms of where consumers are shifting to healthier diets in terms of food choice, which is putting more pressure on the production of your extra virgin oil, where consumers like now want more of fruit oil than your seed oil, where the supply doesn't meet with the demand. I remember on the post that I'd done on my LinkedIn, where I was talking about what the current situation that is happening in Spain. As we all know that Spain is the global, is the highest in terms of global, in terms of olive oil production. But farmers there have reported that there's with this shortage, those big supermarkets are taking advantage, where like now they are putting huge profit by increasing the price, because there's a shortage in terms of the demand, which is there's a shortage in terms of supply while the demand is high. So what they're doing, they're adding that. I remember someone mentioned they even added something like 59% of the margin overall of the profit. So with all that being said, but South Africa still, however, it does produce quality olive oil. However, we are producing relatively low in terms of our production. If we can focus in terms of increasing our capacity and then also capitalize on your African market, I don't think there's high competition for us as South African in African markets. If we can, Namibia, we increase our supply capacity or import capacity to these markets. Also, the chance shift not only on olive oil, focus on also like products, and then capitalize produce and international market.
Thank you so much for those insights. I think Nicholas was saying, yeah, we need to up production, which means a lot more work for him. But kind of, what is your take on that, Wendy? Kind of what Nozipho is saying about where we kind of shift ourselves in terms of the market and exporting our products, how does that look, and where are you standing as an industry body?
Nozipho is quite right in saying that we are severely affected by the conditions in the European countries. That's got a direct effect on us. So I told you earlier on that we produce about 2 million liters of olive oil in South Africa. We import about 6 million liters, which means that there's a big gap in terms of if we want to create that imported volumes to be local volumes, then we need to develop and expand. So that provides an opportunity for South African producers and farmers. I'm just linking it back to what Nicholas has said, is the interesting thing about olive production or the olive harvest. It follows directly after the wine harvest. And if I were a farmer and I would see that there's wine stock currently in the country, overflow, and you're sitting with a shortage on olive, that you can make the sums. I'm not saying pull out your wine vineyards, but I'm saying is plant it as an additional diversification, because with that high demand, it will mean that there's a market for it. You can earn higher prices on your product, and that could support your wine business while wine is on a downward trend. We've been in agriculture for longer than 30 years, and some commodities have ups and down years. Olive is currently having up years. So plant where the profits would lie and then feed it on your other crops. In terms of also why South African olive oil is on high demand internationally, it's because of our producers have put a lot of effort and measures in place to drive quality of the extra virgin olive oil from South Africa. We've got a CTC scheme in South Africa, a commitment to compliance scheme, and that literally is a quality screening of all the olive oils that's on the market that are members of ours, and you will see it's a green seal on the bottle that gives you the indication that the product is locally produced, the product is of high quality. The producers takes the utmost measure and precautions in terms of manufacturing that product. And because of that CTC screening, our producers are able to enter the SA Olive Awards, the APSA Awards, which is taking place next week, but also the international awards. And some of our big producers have been gaining recognition and awards and accolades, driving the quality of South African product in the global market, and obviously driving demand for South African product in the bigger global market. So all these factors play a role of why we need to develop, why we need to plant more trees, and also to gain recognition for product from South Africa.
Thanks so much for that, Wendy, for that context, and also for kind of sharing a bit of the vision and what farmers should really be thinking about in terms of, production and their capacity and where they should possibly be moving to if the profit is there. Nicholas, what's your take on it? You said you recently planted more trees. If you were in wine, and would you be leaning more towards olives at this point, kind of keeping in mind the market if you weren't fully into the olives as you are? But where are you leaning, and what is your take on it as a primary producer?
As a farmer in general, not just an olive farmer, I think diversifying is a very important part in ensuring sustainability on your farm. If the wine harvest is down like now and the olive harvest is up, you can meet each other most likely somewhere in the middle, depending on where you planted. So with that, it's also not on the sale of wine, but as well as the labor that you employ. Olive oil production harvest is in a time where nothing else is happening. So if I look at our neighboring farms, majority of them ask me, I've got some permanent labor that can we maybe help each other, see what we can do, accommodate each other, see how we can do that, and vice versa. Olive farming is quite. Everybody thinks it's a tree that you leave. It can be there in the desert and it will grow and it will most likely survive, but it will not always be food. So to farm it properly, it is a difficult thing. But yeah, I wanted to share actually one interest, and please correct me if I'm wrong, Wendy, but olive oil is the only vegetable oil that is extracted mechanically and not chemically. So that is also to look at when you're buying any or selling any olive oil, and educating your customers on why olive oil is good, and with generating more customers by educating them will ensure that the industry starts growing. And that is why we are planting more trees. We are planting more cultivars that are, firstly, production-wise, gives a better yield. Quality-wise, gives you a better profile that you're tasting. And to get back to you on the exporting, on the importing on site, unfortunately, South Africa has no import duties on extra virgin olive oil, which makes it makes us a little bit tight with the pricing locally. So some companies need to look to export their oils to get a better possible price to be able to advance their farming and growing their business as well. So, I mean, if you, there's no comparison when you compare the current import oil on shelf versus local oil. If you know what you taste for, you know exactly. It's no comparison at all.
I work in the beekeeping industry, and the conversation around how much honey we import to how much we produce locally is one of the question, on people's minds and in producers' hearts and beekeepers' hearts. They're like, we should be saying no. We should be able to do it. But yeah, I get you, and I think I kind of hear what you're saying, that I guess the onus is on the farmer to decide where they kind of position themselves and where they want to grow to, and also keeping in mind what the bigger body role is of SA Olives, and how they, at the end of the day, also has a role to play in how they approach and what they do in terms of that. Actually, Jeremiah Jothams is actually a farmer himself. He's doing rabbits and some crop farming, saying, hey guys. So hi Jeremiah, thank you so much for joining the conversation this evening. Just in terms of the production side of things, and I think Nicholas, you may have to leave soon because he's had a busy day on the farm. But Nicholas, if I can just pick your brain a little bit more in terms of, you mentioned, pest management and disease control when it comes to olive production, how have you managed this? And also, what are the kind of sustainable practices that you use to kind of keep your crops healthy generally on farm level? Thanks.
If you look at the olive paste after extraction, what can you do with it? There's not a lot of people that use the extraction for different things. A lot of people use it for feeds. It's very difficult to use for feeds as well, due to the bitterness that's in the pulp. So something we do for sustainability on our side, on specifically the health of the trees, is making compost of what we have. The pip that is extracted after the pressing or the extraction process, we will share with farmer for his boilers. We will use his chicken manure to again make the compost side. So enhancing our abilities under the soil by making a better carpet root system, where if I give fertilizer, if I give anything else that's going through the dripper or through the soil, I know it will be to the benefit of the tree. On the pest and the fungi side, it's a very difficult thing. One year you get scale. I don't know if you know the pest that is scale. You get scale. I haven't had scale in almost 2 years. I haven't had Tingidid on the farm for, I think it was more than 4 or 5 years before I even came to the farm. So it's almost like 10 years. And suddenly we have Tingidid. It's very difficult to get under control if you don't do quick. I'm down from my projected harvest in 2024 by 25%, and I can almost chalk it up to Tingidid itself, the pest itself. To do 193 hectares, it's very, very difficult to put in a spray and get through the whole farm in a week. That is a good timing for me. To do it in a week's time, it is then I'm on par. But I'm moving away from your question about sustainability, so I'm moving more to the farming side. If you keep your tree healthy, it is a natural repellent to pests. To keep your tree healthy, there's a lot of things you need. There's a lot of things you need, and it cannot be chalked up to 1 or 2 things. So I think really on the sustainability side, the only comment I can do for you is use what you have and ensure that don't do something damaging to your environment, to your soils. A lot of people have this idea of clean farming, very nice to have a clean bunkie, like they call it, a ridge or so on. But weed killer, it also, there's different things you can use to get the same results. I think that's from my side.
Yeah, no, definitely quickly, I don't mind that you kind of trailed off into the broader aspects of your responses to the question. I think it's always important to kind of take all of that into account. And I want to keep you for at least 2 more questions, and then you can drop, because I am considering that you've been up since 4 o'clock. Just in terms of, how do you ensure the quality of your olive oil, and what are the factors that can influence the flavor profile? It's just that question. And then the last one for you, and I'm hoping to also pick Nozipo's brain on this as well. It's just around the use of technology and how important that is when it comes to kind of primary production, and what she kind of has noticed from her perspective as well. Thanks, Nicholas.
Right. So on the ensuring the quality of the oil and the flavor profile. Flavor profile, it is region for region, cultivar for cultivar. I've got, for example, 33 hectares of Arbequina cultivar, and it is spread over, I want to say, 10, 11 different orchards. Each one tastes different. If I harvest this one by, I want to say May, April, and the next one 1 week later, it tastes different. Depending on what, and this is coming to your next question as well with technology. I had the privilege of visiting a facility in Florence, Italy, and it was a state-of-the-art facility that they recently built. It commissioned 1 month before I arrived, and they started their harvest. It's variable speed drives that they used on crushing the olives, or the feeder that feeds the olives into the crusher, and through that they changed the bitterness, they changed the flavorness of the flavor of the oil, they're changing the pungency of the oil. So they took same orchard harvest and they spread it over 3 different sections for me, and did 3 different settings on the machine. And then afterwards we tasted it, and you cannot compare the oil. It's the same oil. So technology it's there. You can do what you want to do with the oils. On the ensuring the quality of the olive oil is definitely in South Africa. You need to work with speed. If you harvest your olives, immediately once you take it off the tree, it starts fermenting. The fermentation process starts. So you've got 24 to put all that olive to ensure the top quality that you can possibly get out of that olive. The faster you get that olive through the machine, the better the quality can be. So furthermore, do not pick up any dropped olives, please. If the olive is dropped, I know the majority of Spain, they throw their netting, they leave it, and from there on they let the olives drop, and then they harvest it from there, and they've got the word for it. They use that olives for lampante, if I'm
lampante.
Yeah. So and if you don't know what you're tasting, you might not even know what you're using. Whenever olive drops on the soil, do not pick it up. Do not use that through the extraction process. I think setting up your machine is critical. Different ripeness needs different settings. Different cultivars needs different settings. So the quality of the olive oil, all the way from harvesting up until the finish of the extraction process, it's connected.
Thank you so much for that context, and for sharing some of your hands-on knowledge with producing this specific commodity. We have a question here from Lady Tepaya asking, how does one decide whether to plant them for oil production or table olives, and then kind of location and market demand? I think we'll get into the market demand shortly with Nozipo and Wendy again. And then the other question is the person saying, I'm in the northwest, Taung, close to the Northern Cape, semi-arid. So kind of just someone wanting to get into the production side of things. And Nicholas, what is your take on that? Thanks.
So firstly, I think is to determine where is your closest pressing or extraction facility. I think that is very critical. It depends also if the person is wanting to use their oil for themselves, or is it something they want to sell. So I do think a variety of oil and table olives is very good. You get dual cultivars like a mission cultivar you can use for green table olives, black table olives, and you can use it my personal experience with Mission olives, I do not get enough oil yield out of it, so I would rather try and push the green and the black table olives before I use it for oil. It's very nice oil if you do it at the right stage, the ripeness stage. Then you get cultivars like Moshelara, that is a very nice green table olives, but if you do not get the green olives off in time, and I have not done it before, and I do not recommend it. I was using it for black table olive. It gets too soggy, so it makes a fantastic oil as well. So area is dependent on where the facility is and what are you looking to do possibly. If you the market demand is very applicable to that question. If you have your own facility, you can pressure oil, store it, and you can use it from there on, and you can determine what market you want to go to. But if you do not have your own facility, that will determine your market. The closest facility will determine your market.
Thank you so much. And of course, we'd love to share more of these resources. I think Olive SA Olives is definitely a resource to kind of tap into. For information, Wendy will share more details on that. Nicholas, I'm going to say goodbye to you. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for answering my questions. I'm going to stick with the two ladies for the rest of the conversation. I do appreciate what you're doing for the industry, and thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Thank you.
I'm sure Wendy will send it through to me, and we can discuss anything further. Make contact regarding any advice as well.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So,
Lady
Lady Sapaya, there you can plug Nicholas for any additional advice. He's saying he's open to that. Don't take too much of his time, though. He seems like a busy man, but I'm sure he would be open to that. Thank you so much, Nicholas. Okay, so now back to just in terms of the conversation, just broader around. I think there was a question around market demand. And I think I'm going to go over to Nozipho just to give us a little bit kind of an overview of kind of the main, market challenges when it comes to olive farmers. And I think, Wendy, you can both actually take this question that we face locally and internationally. I think you have touched on these points, but for those that might have been joining as the conversation was going on, Nozipho, over to you. Thanks.
I'd like to talk more about the demand. So as Wendy mentioned earlier on, I remember when she was comparing that we produce approximately 2 million in terms of liters, while we import around 6 million, meaning it shows that there's a gap in terms of we stand a chance. It tells us there's a high demand, so we have shortage of supply. So I think it gives opportunities to olive growers to enter the market. I will encourage people to start in terms of joining the market because, as I mentioned earlier on, like now there's this shift in terms of healthier, in terms of consumption, in terms of what clients, what consumers prefer. They prefer healthier stuff, which is like now we see shift from oils towards fruit oil. So to answer the question, yes, there's a market for olive oil and a huge gap.
Thanks so much, Nozipho. And I think you agree with that statement 100%, Wendy. I think the last conversation we just had was around how do we make space and how do we kind of fast accelerate this growth, thinking about where predominantly olives are currently produced and how we kind of grow and transform the industry even. I think that was a big part of the conversation that we had. Like, how do we encourage Lady Sepaya, who's in the Northwest province, to say, hey, are you interested? Do you want to get into primary production? What are the possibilities? Thank you so much.
There's the demand is there. We just have to feed the supply. And if you look at the olive oil supply at the moment from South Africa, 95% of table olives and olive oil comes from the Western Cape. Although there are still smaller percentages out in the northern Cape, Eastern Cape even, and small little percentages and drops in other provinces. I still believe that there is an opportunity that's out there for the other provinces. We just have to go look at research and development, soil analysis, looking at the climatic conditions. But I almost want to say that SA Olive is gearing itself to work with the other provinces, enterprise development agencies, to see if we can't test where the Mediterranean climate with the soil and all the conditions are ideal. Do 1 hectare, 2 hectare plantings to see if it can be a viable crop in the other provinces. Because that 6 million litres that we import, I think in the next 5 years, we can, even if we just do half of that volume from South Africa, an olive tree takes about 4 or 5 years, even up to 8 years to reach its full growth potential to deliver fruit. And I think that we can fast track that in terms of the new cultivars, the new technology that's available, and see if we can't get those volumes from other provinces or farmers in the Western Cape that's willing to diversify the hectarage on their farms. And then that will definitely put South Africa in a better footprint globally in terms of worldwide supply of olive oil. And it has been done before. It's not that we, as South Africa, is pushing the narrative. Australia has done this 10 years ago. And if you look at the volumes from Australia currently and how successful they have been in the production and the supply of table olives and olive oil, then I think that South African can also achieve that going forward. But we would need assistance from government, from enterprise development agencies to support the emerging farmers wanting to explore the opportunity in olive. Olive is a very highly intensive, capital intensive crop. So your initial setup cost, your input costs yearly is a little bit on the high side. And I think that is where government and industry players can partner with emerging farmers to drive transformation, obviously, and to get new farmers involved, but also to feed in on the demand for South African olive oil. So it's a dual purpose, and I think it ticks all the boxes, even with job creation.
Yeah, I was just about to point that out because what Nicholas was saying was that it is quite labor intensive, and so there is kind of a room to create more jobs when it comes to kind of growing this industry specifically. And you've kind of painted a little bit of a picture of my kind of last and final question about what you see the future of South African, the olive industry or the olive oil industry looking like, and what are the opportunities that exist. But for you, Nozipa, as an agricultural economist, what is your take on how you see it? Do you agree with Wendy's take on how they, as an industry body, kind of see it growing? How would you kind of envision this future? And what are your insights as an agricultural economist? Thanks.
I want to believe that South Africa is still standing a chance in terms of producing and selling the olive oil, both international and national, locally. Especially if we can also capitalize on the entry on the international markets, gain more entry. The reason why I'm saying this, there are also some countries that are still also new in the market that we can compete with, namely your Portugal, your Turkey. So I think we also still stand a good chance if we can focus on market access in the international markets. I think we can do well. Also, we still compete more in terms of South Africa when we talk of African continent, because of the quality of our products. We can also make use of that supply, take over Africa, supply Africa with our olive oil.
Thank you so much. And I think, Wendy, you mentioned the competition coming up. Maybe we should all be encouraged to go and join and taste olives and olive oil and just create awareness around the industry itself. I think, there are certain areas within agriculture that we somewhat neglect, but it's all part of the industry. And so I kind of want to encourage everyone joining and listening to also kind of take note of how far we've come and what else we should be doing. So buying local olive oil, supporting Wallow Creek, supporting, those list of farmers that we know and produce and buy from them. I think that's an important aspect. But if I could just get some last and final comments from you, Wendy, as we wrap up the conversation. Thanks so much.
I think that, the olive industry is on a very exciting journey ahead. I think there's a lot to do. I think in terms of obviously growing the industry in terms of volume, but also getting olive oil to the consumer out there at a price competitive rate. At the moment, olive oil is the only oil that is not VAT zero rated. I don't know if you know that. So all the other oils you don't pay VAT on olive oil you do. So the lobbying with government is also taking place to drive that part of olive oil also being non-VAT zero rated so that we can drive the price competitiveness and that consumer are urged to buy olive oil as a healthy alternative to other oils. So that will be a plus for industry, but also a plus towards the consumer. And then also creating awareness amongst our consumers with regards to the health benefits of olive oil. We know that olive oil is the most healthiest oil in terms of current sicknesses experienced by consumers in South Africa. So if we can get the product to the consumer, also addressing health via that, then it's a win-win. And yes, thank you for supporting our industry. We do appreciate that. And these conversations are very valuable.
Thanks so much, Wendy. Tabisile, and we'll giving you a shout out there. Say, hey, Wendy. Hey, everyone. Hey, Tabisile. Thank you so much for joining the call. You've come towards the end of it, but I think we've covered a lot of ground, and I want to thank both you, Nosipo, and Wendy, and obviously Nicholas, who left a little bit earlier as a producer in the industry, for joining me as part of the conversation. And I hope to kind of in the future, obviously this conversation will be available on Food for Mzansi's website and also on the YouTube channel if you missed any part of it. And I just want to thank both of you for your time once again and everything of the best with the work that you're doing for the agricultural industry, very specific fields, but for growing that and for contributing so beautifully. Thank you so much, Wendy. Thank you so much, Nosipo.
Thank you. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Nosipo.
All right.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you, Wendy.
I'm getting in contact with you.
All right. Thank you. I'm looking forward.
Thank you so much. So that's a wrap, everybody. Thank you to both of you once again. Thank you to everyone who joined, and have a great rest of the evening. Bye-bye for now.